Okay, I've had a couple people ask lately, like, how come from the back it looks like there's all these white lines and gaps, but on the front it's all solid and full? Okay, so let's say we want to fill this square with tufts. You might think like, oh, we should have like even distribution, where everything's all spaced out evenly. So each one of these would be a tuft, which, by the way, a tuft is, if this is the fabric, a tuft is a piece of yarn that has been looped through the fabric and just has both ends sticking out the other side. So it's kind of like a little V shape. This is how cut pile works, at least. Loop pile would be like this, where it's doesn't have the ends cut. But in order to do this, you would need to take one strand of yarn at a time and draw each of these lines upwards, which again can be fine. It's just a little time consuming. Another option would be to tuft with 2 strands of yarn. So that's gonna give you something more like this. Right, so it kind of looks like we have the beginnings of a gap here and a gap here, but because of this expansion thing where the yarn kind of like goes floop out and fills in the spots, on the other side those gaps get filled in. And here we only had to draw 3 lines to tuft the same area. Another way to fit in more stitches per area is to have a shorter stitch length. So you'd be fitting in more stitches up and down. And if you do that, you could potentially even widen the space between your lines even more. So you could do something like this and potentially have the same tuft density actually. The only limitation here would be how long your yarn is in that little V. If you're using a shorter pile length, then the yarn can only like spread and fill out so much space because it's just not long enough. But if you have a longer cut pile, you could potentially put these lines farther apart. So here you can tell this line has more stitches per inch than this line. And you can see that the stitches are more like bunched and squished together than this one. And that means this line is going to be denser and have more tufts than this one. To control the horizontal spacing of your lines, obviously you just pick where you draw your line. To control the vertical spacing, how many stitches per inch in your line, you control that with how fast you move your gun. So it'd be the difference between this versus this. So that second movement that I did is going to have a lot more stitches per inch and it's going to be a lot denser and more tightly packed.